It also highlights the height of emotions and the real reckoning that's happening inside of Israel. Let's get to this because this is a story that is not being properly reported by the American press. There is far more dissent, vitriol, and debate inside that country than there is in this country, which remains shocking to me. And just to show you from the Jerusalem Post, which is a right-wing publication, by the way, inside of Israel, let's put this up there on the screen. 86% of respondents in the Jerusalem Post poll, including 79% of the coalition government supporters, said that the attack from Gaza is a failure of the country's leadership. Quote, a staggering 92% said that the war is causing anxiety. And furthermore, all the respondents, 94%, believe the government must bear some responsibility for the lack of security preparedness that led to the assault. Over 75% saying the government holds most of the responsibilities.
And that was the thing Charlie Kirk was trying to talk about and accused of being an anti.
And the rest of it, as you got, can you put it back up there on the screen, please? Just because I want people to be able to see that as I read. Netanyahu must resign, most Israelis say. New survey from 620 Israelis from across the country found that the majority of respondents believed he should resign following the conclusion of the next operation. Quote, a slim majority, 56%, but still 28% of coalition voters agreed and 52% said that the defense minister himself must also resign. That highlights just the immense amount of anger inside the country against the security establishment, for which they have given up their children. They have given up years of their life in the IDF. They've given up all civil liberties that they ever had, or even had a pretense of. They gave up so much for the promise of being kept safe, which is what Bibi ran on over and over and over again. And people have taken to the streets. Here is one example of a foreign correspondent from ABC News in the midst of one of these protests. Let's take a listen.
I think the concern is that if there is a significant ground incursion into Gaza, Phil, that they're going to lose those hostages. Hamas has honeycombed all of Gaza with these tunnels. That's where they keep the militants. That's where they keep the rockets and their weapons. That's where it's believed they are keeping all of the hostages. They are the most valuable commodity in all of Gaza right now. And I want you to see what's going on here. There appears to be a protest breaking out, some anger with police. Looks like they're taking over the road. I'm not exactly sure. But the anger here is that not enough is being done about the hostages, that Israel seems to be willing to fight in Gaza but not bring these people home. And basically to a person here, we've been told that everybody is willing to give up the 10, 11,000 Palestinian prisoners being held in Israel in exchange for the 150 or so. And that includes the Americans, of course. We're trying to figure out what's going on, but tensions have been high all afternoon. At one point, protesters here tried to block the entrance, and there's a truck that kind of nudged up against them. Now they've taken over the street right now.
There you go. I mean, you could see that was literally in the streets of Tel Aviv. And what he's pointing out is that there's a lot of concern in Israel about the hostages. This is something I highlighted last time around, but it's important to remember the Israeli population was very supportive of Bibi whenever he traded almost 1,000, I believe, Hamas or Palestinian prisoners for a single Israeli soldier. And it was because people there all have a direct connection. They see themselves and their children in the eyes of the kids who in many cases, do not even necessarily want to serve in the military, who do end up there. And then the last thing, we debated putting this into our show, but just to explain before we play it, is we don't want to say that this is all of Israeli sentiment. But again, we want to play a voice of an Israeli American who has a very different view of how the government should respond to this conflict, just to show you not everybody inside of Israel is, clamoring for blood in Gaza. This was during an interview with CNN, and keeping in mind, this is a person who lost a member of his family actually in the attack from Hamas. Let's take a listen.
What I wanted to say is the most important for me, and I think also for my brother, was that his death won't be used to kill innocent people. And sadly, my government is using cynically the death of people to just kill. Like they promised us it's gonna bring us security, but of course it's not security, because they always tell us, that if we're gonna kill enough Palestinians, so it's gonna be better for us. But of course it never brings us peace, and it never brings us better lives. It just brings more and more terror and more people killed, like my brother. and I don't want anything to happen to people in Gaza like it happens to my brother, and I'm sure he wouldn't have any either. So that's my call to my government: stop killing innocent people, and that's not the way that brings us peace and security to people in Israel.
That's a very courageous statement by somebody who just lost their brother in a terrible terrorist attack. And yeah, again, look, there are also a lot of people whose relatives were killed who are like, wipe them off the face of the earth, let's kill them all. So we're not pretending that's the majority sentiment. But I do think it's important for people to understand, Israel is a country just like anybody else with a lot of different people, and they're having a lot of dissent and a lot of debate over there. No, overwhelmingly, they agree both that something needs to be done and that the government is to blame. So let's follow their lead and actually talk about it in a nuanced way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Netanyahu, in the wake of these attacks, where, as you can see from these numbers, he is overwhelmingly being blamed for the failure of the response and anticipation. We now know that he was directly warned, at least by Egyptian intelligence, also appears by U.S. intelligence, also it appears his own intelligence services picked up some signs. Hamas was out there doing war games, and they're like, I think this is fine. It had been his strategy, his stated strategy over years to sort of prop up Hamas as a way of foiling any efforts at establishing an actual Palestinian state. He found them to be a useful adversary. So in the wake of all of this, with rage among so many of the citizens of Israel, we played for you, one of the cabinet ministers getting screamed at and kicked out of a hospital by the people there who were absolutely irate. Netanyahu has been really pretty silent, not taking questions from press because he doesn't want to have to face any of these very difficult questions, doing very little and saying very little about the families who have loved ones who are being held hostage right now. Certainly seems to be no openness to that sort of negotiation to try to bring those hostages home safely. Now, again, it is the fault of Hamas that they are holding these hostages. They should release them. It is barbaric and it is inhumane and it is insane that they are doing so. But the Israeli people see that the government is not doing anything to really try to bring their loved ones home. Very emotional issue. And as I said, apparently they've looked more to Joe Biden for leadership in the wake of these attacks than they have their own prime minister. Biden giving that big speech, it was watched by a huge proportion of the Israeli public. Netanyahu doing nothing similar, and as I said, not making himself available to the press for any sort of questioning on these failures. So, there appears from the outside, we're not there, so we can only say what we're seeing from these opinion polls and from the media clips and coverage. But there appears to be a real rally around the flag, as you would expect, but also a sort of unity in opposition of Netanyahu in the direction that he has taken the Israeli government in.
Yeah, I think that, and that's important. The reason, because we didn't have that after 9/11, and it led to a lot of massive mistakes. You both rallied around the flag, and then the guy who we elected president, and we didn't end up questioning that for a long time. And by that time, there were hundreds of thousands of people who were dead, including many U.S. soldiers. So I would just hope and I would pray that many people inside Israel don't make the same mistake that we did. You can rally around your flag and you can protect our nation while also recognizing that your politicians are not always the same people behind that flag.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.